On this episode of Survive and Thrive 8791, Coach Decorah shares his take on Easter from the Buck and Honey's remote studios. On this special Easter edition, Coach Decorah reflects on faith, belief, and his thoughts on the meaning of Easter, from the Last Supper to the betrayal, crucifixion, and resurrection. He shares the powerful story of Jesus and reminds us that even in the darkest moments, belief and hope are always possible. This will be a good one. Here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. What is up wherever you are or whatever you happen to be doing? I hope you're having a great day. Welcome to another episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. I am your host, Coach Decorah. We are in the Buck and Honey's remote studios on the east side of our great capital city of Madison, Wisconsin. You can listen to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, and YouTube at Survive and Thrive 8791. You can follow the podcast on Facebook at Survive and Thrive 8791, the podcast, or you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Decorah 8791, as well as hitting me up on Facebook at Tim Decorah. Don't forget to hit that subscribe or like button wherever you listen to the show. Leave me a comment if you liked what you heard, if there's a topic or you know a guest who would love to tell their story. Email me at tdecorah@gmail.com. Glad you could join us today. Our mission is to share stories and conversations that make you cry, laugh, and think, stimulating emotions, creating laughter, and inspiring the mind. A new episode will air on Monday and Thursday featuring a wide range of guests. The podcast will touch on many subjects such as grief, loss of a loved one, recovery, professional setback, divorce, success despite challenges, etc. Our guests will share how they learn to survive and thrive. This is where we get into the episode intro. According to the internet, and the internet is always correct, right? Well, if you live in my house, I don't need the internet. I don't need Google. I don't need Alexa. I have my wife, and she's always right. In the U.S., a significant majority, roughly 2/3, 66% of adults, believe the biblical accounts of Jesus' resurrection, and they believe them to be completely accurate. This belief is consistent across the years. However, 1/3, about 20%, do not believe in the resurrection, and 14% are unsure. With that being said, today is a couple of days after Easter, and with family time important, I tried to get a couple of guests on, a couple of potential guests, but I was turned down because in favor of family time, and that's the way it should be. So this is the 2 days after Easter episode. And when that happens, I don't have any guests. You get me. So what is up today? 2 days ago, my wife, Sarah, and I attended Door Creek Church over here on the east side of Madison, Wisconsin. The service at Door Creek Church blends music, singing, and a sermon. So we attended church Easter Sunday. Of course, Easter is marked by a couple of things. Easter egg hunts, delivery of Easter baskets, eating a lot of food, spending some time with family, maybe visiting some friends, and otherwise Sunday spent enjoying each other's company. The Easter season is also marked by what is called the resurrection of Jesus, which is and refers to the belief that Jesus rose from the dead on the third day after his crucifixion. And I'm not going to try to explain all of that to you. I'm going to put it in my terms and how I understand it. And some of you may try to fact check me or whatever, but this is how I see things. And it's more of just a generalized look at the resurrection. It's such a great story, true story in my heart and in what I believe in. And obviously I probably fall into that 66% of the people that believe. And fortunately, when I was growing up, I had a mother who taught me the importance of praying and having a higher power. And for me, growing up, that higher power was God. And I also believed in Jesus and came to believe in the Holy Spirit as time went on. On Thursday of Holy Week, and that would have been a couple days before Easter Sunday, Jesus gathers his crew. And again, these aren't my own words. the disciples and prepares for the Passover feast on Thursday. This is where he is to have the Last Supper, and the Last Supper knowing that he is about to go through some horrible pain and suffering, and that suffering is near, and he knows what's about to happen. Before we get into that story, though, I need to talk about our sponsor. Our sponsor, Buck and Honey's Restaurants, are a place that people can escape to. For me, it's a great escape from cooking dinner. With their great food and drink menu, 5-star customer service, and a welcoming and vibrant atmosphere, people keep coming back. With locations in Sun Prairie, Monona, Waunakee, and Mount Horeb, most communities in the Dane County area, and that encompasses our great capital city of Madison, Wisconsin, can get to a Buck and Honey's within 10 to 15 minutes. And yes, I have been to Buck and Honey's many times. Typically in the segment, we have a guest that will talk through what their life was like, what happened, and then what it's like now. We're changing the theme today, and we're telling a little story, and the story deals with what occurred and why we have Easter. Today's episode is a little bit different. I don't have a guest, but I have a story to share in my own words, and I already led into that just before our sponsor. Jesus is at the Last Supper. He's about to suffer at the hands of Pontius Pilate, the governor of Judea. Pontius Pilate is most famously known for presiding over the trial of Jesus and ordering Jesus' crucifixion. But we turn back to Thursday night at the Last Supper. Jesus shares bread, and this is to signify his body. He also shares some wine, which is the signifying his blood, with his disciples, and tells them that he will sacrifice his body and blood for the sins of the world. And he wants to be remembered by that. They have their supper, they break bread, they have wine, and after supper, he and his disciples leave to go and do some praying. And this is where he is set up and betrayed by one of his disciples. And that disciple is Judas. And how that goes is that they go to this garden. And I don't remember exactly what the name, it begins with the G, but they go to this garden and they're going to do some praying. And his disciple Judas is in cahoots with the bad guys. And those would be, I believe, were some Roman soldiers. And in order to let the Roman soldiers know who Jesus is, Judas tells them earlier in the week, that he will kiss the person that is Jesus, and that will thus give up who Jesus is to these soldiers. And indeed, he does that. Upon that happening, Jesus is arrested and put on trial. After the trial, Jesus was sentenced to death by crucifixion. And at the time, the crucifixion was one of the worst and most disgraceful forms of capital punishment. And of course, those of you that know of the story or believe in the story have heard the story that Jesus is nailed to the cross. And that's the crucifixion. Prior to this happening, Jesus is put on trial and he is sentenced and has to carry his cross, the cross that he is going to be crucified on, through town to Calvary. And while he's doing that through town, he is mocked and bullied, spit on, and probably some of the worst words or names that a person can be called. That happens to him while he's going through town and going to Calvary. Once at Calvary, Roman soldiers then put Jesus up on the cross, and he is nailed to the cross where he would die. And he would die sometime in the early afternoon. Some of the things I saw were about 3 p.m. he died and then was taken down from the cross. And because our listeners want to hear how this all turns out, I need to talk about our sponsor one more time before I finish this story. But Buck and Honey's has been with the Survive and Thrive 8791 crew since the beginning With 4 locations in the Madison area, one is always near. People ask me why Buck and Honey's, the owner, Tom Anderson, places a high priority on the mental health of his employees. He has a mental health professional available for them should they need support. I don't know how many businesses go above and beyond their EAP, the Employee Assistance Program, but Tom Anderson and Buck and Honey's does. On Good Friday of Holy Week, Jesus would die on the cross, the crucifixion. In segment 2, I will finish the story, so I want you to stay tuned. Don't change that dial. You're not going to want to miss the end of the story. And segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791, we will be back.
If you, a loved one, or someone you know is experiencing a physical, mental, or emotional crisis, there is help and resources out there. Contact NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness Helpline, at 1-800-950-6264. This is a free service providing information, resource referrals, and support to people living with a mental illness, their family, providers, and the public. United Way 211 is available 24/7, 365 and offers free confidential assistance. They connect people with the local programs and services that can help. Dial 211. Emergency Crisis Services, dial 911. The Suicide Prevention Lifeline, dial 988. To connect via web, chat, visit suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Along with those numbers, there is help. You just need to say 3 words. I need help. Now, back to the show.
We are back. Welcome back to segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Tim Decorah. The podcast is where I feature guests who share their story in hopes of helping others who may be struggling with what life throws at them. Today, I'm sharing the story of Jesus and some of the meanings of Easter. I must remind you that I am not the best storyteller, nor am I an ordained minister, but I am a Christian, and I do have a belief in a higher power. And that higher power for me happens to be God, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. So normally not a big person to talk about those kinds of things, but I think this story and what it means to roughly 66% of the United States, with 20% not believing it and 14% unsure. There's most of us that have either heard the story, know it a lot more details than I do, or you just know that Jesus died on Sunday, but you don't know anything prior to that. And I'm just getting to know this story. As old as I am, I've heard it before, but I get lost in some of the details. So for those of you that have not heard the story, you're hearing it how I perceive it. So we got to the part where Jesus is crucified and he's nailed to the cross. Some of the Bible readings and some of the information I have seen said that he died approximately 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and that would be on Good Friday. So he's nailed to the cross, the crucifixion, and in the late afternoon, Jesus would take his last breath. Around 6 p.m., roughly about 3 hours after he takes his last breath, he is taken down off the cross and laid in a tomb. Not sure how close the tomb is to the site of his actual death, but the tomb is a cave with a stone covering blocking the entrance. And that is where he is laid to rest on that Friday night. And he is being guarded. His body is being guarded by Roman soldiers. Later on Saturday night, the day of the Sabbath, as I believe what I saw somewhere, Jesus's body would be prepared for burial. And the one story I heard is that a couple of gentlemen came to purchase Jesus's body from the Roman guards that were there. And I don't believe there was money involved, but there was ointments and herbs and basically a few things that had value at that particular time. They were presented to these Roman guards, and these Roman guards said, yes, you can have the body. And one of the stories that I heard was one of the people that came and purchased Jesus's body. He used to be, I believe, affiliated with the Romans. I don't know if he was a Roman soldier or he was in the government, but he had a belief that Jesus was the Messiah. But being part of the Romans, he couldn't come out and say that, because if he did, he would be just as guilty as Jesus. So he had to keep that to himself and protect himself, so that he wasn't connected to Jesus, but he was connected to him, which is why he ended up, I believe, purchasing Jesus' body. And they prepared his body for burial. On Sunday morning, several women, some of the followers of Jesus, would come to the tomb, and they would see that the large stone, which was covering the entrance to this cave or this tomb, had been rolled away, and the entrance was open. An angel appeared and told the women, these followers of Jesus, these women, that Jesus had risen from the dead, just as he said he would, or the scriptures said he would, and that day he would make 5 appearances in the area to some of his disciples, some of his followers, some of those same guys that were at that Last Supper, and others, showing indeed that he did arise from the dead. And in the Nicene Creed, and that's a statement of Christian faith in many religions, and of course there's probably different wording, different offshoots, but it essentially says the same thing. Again, what denomination you are or how it is read or what church you go to, but it's essentially the same. And here is the creed. On the third day, he rose again in fulfillment of the scriptures. He ascended into heaven and is seated at the right hand of the Father. He will come again in glory to judge the living and the dead, and his kingdom will have no end. So why do I tell that story? Is it because I'm deeply religious? I wouldn't say I'm deeply religious. Do I attend church every Sunday? No, I don't attend church every Sunday. But I am a Christian, and I do have a belief in a higher power. And one thing is for certain, I am not that higher power. There's been some cool things that have happened in my life to me in the last 1,224 days since I started on my road to physical and mental recovery that I simply cannot explain. Now, some people might say that, well, it just happened, it's coincidence, but some of the things that transpired leading to that 1,224 days, I can't explain other than someone was looking out for me, and those are my higher powers, God, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. And that belief in a higher power, like I mentioned earlier, came from my mother, who taught me how to pray as a young child. And I'm forever grateful for her that she instilled in me that faith of a higher power, great spirit, that one day when I leave earth, that I will be going to the happy hunting grounds. I will be going to heaven, and heaven is the best place. It's perfect, and one day I will go there. And that's what I firmly believe. And that is why I tell that story, and so you know a little bit about who I am and what my faith is and what I kind of believe in. But I just really like that story, and I wanted to share that with the listeners today. I'm not trying to teach you anything, trying to show you that my way is the only way, but I wanted to tell that story because I really think it's cool, and it's something that I firmly believe in, and I really enjoy that story. So what a great episode. I'm so glad you could join the Survive and Thrive 8791 crew today. This story and a little bit of my faith is something that I don't share much, but felt compelled to today. I hope that you all have something to believe in that carries you through good times and bad times. I know a belief in a higher power has helped me tremendously. Our call to action: have faith in something that you can rely on in the hardest of times. If you don't have something to believe in and you're going through a hard time, maybe, just maybe, a little bit of prayer and believing in something might help you out. Thank you for joining me today. Shorter episode, and I felt compelled to share this story. And if you haven't heard the story before, I hope you enjoyed it in my shortened storytelling. On our next episode of Survive and Thrive 8791, we will have another amazing guest in the Buck and Honey's remote studios who will share how they learn to survive and thrive. If you have a story to share or you know someone who does, please reach out to me at tdecorah@gmail.com. Until next time, hang in there with whatever you happen to be going through, and with hard work, dedication, and determination, you can survive and thrive. Until next time, take care.